So thanks for coming today. This is the Eat This Now boot camp. So I was trying to think of, kind of early at the beginning of the week so you guys can make all these awesome changes if you have any to change, and then zoom through the rest of the week just stronger and better. So thank you for coming today, and hopefully you'll take at least something away that you guys can apply for your lives immediately. So that would be the goal. Okay, so my name is Andrea Nicolai, and I work for the University of Florida in the Extension in Polk County. I'm the Family and Consumer Sciences agent. So I'm a registered dietitian, and I teach food and nutrition classes all around the county, and lately more virtually than in person, but usually in person. So hopefully I'll get to see you guys later in the future. And so if you haven't used Zoom very much, this is kind of a quick tutorial overview to get the chat box and things like that to show up. Sometimes they disappear on the screen. You can usually hover over the bottom, and usually they will kind of pop up then if you don't see them. And then there's a ... and it'll say more, and that's where you find the chat box. So you can click on that, and then you can access the chat box. And if you have questions or comments or anything like that, then that is where you would find that. So I have an evaluation following this, and if you guys can do it, I do read them and I look at them. I can't tell who's coming from who, so it just all lumps them together. But I know, then it's anonymous, so you guys can tell me how it is. And hopefully I can just continue to get better based on your feedback. So thank you. All right, so then objectives for today would be to recognize and explain the My Plate, and the tips for a healthy diet, right? So we're going to learn tips on how to choose the healthiest options for the plate. It's like the best of the best series, okay? So it's like fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, whole grains, dairy, and then healthy fats. So identify sources of sodium, saturated fats, and added sugars. So those are the things that we want to try to avoid, and so we're going to find where to look for them. And I want to recognize too, I know this is information. It's good, put out by the government based on a ton of research and a lot of people getting together and figuring out what we need and what would actually help us. But, there's different backgrounds. You guys all have different backgrounds and different skills. And so I want you to try to think during this presentation how you could take this information and personalize it for yourself. Because a blanket statement, it's good, but I want you to actually tangibly take something away from that. So say I'm like, eat more vegetables, then let's figure out, maybe for you, that you only like cooked vegetables. And so that's gonna work fine. Just for you, think, okay, how can I have more of those cooked vegetables? If that's how it is, And so we'll try to think of ways to do that. So why should we eat healthy? So in Polk County, our top 5 causes of death, and they're similar to the US. So if you aren't in Polk County, then they're still applicable. So we have heart disease is number 1. Then we have cancer, chronic lower respiratory disease, stroke, and then unintentional injury is 5. But if you look at them, the top 4 are diet related. So that means that, there's a large number of deaths that we could prevent by eating better or by stopping to smoke or exercising more. So, yeah, just mute everybody there. Okay, so then the top 4 are diet related. And I wanted to just say too, a lot of times people think diabetes should be in there, and it's actually number 6. But a lot of the people who have diabetes die of heart disease, so that is why it's not on the top 5. So today we're going to talk about the My Plate, right? And so the idea is that instead of the pyramid, we now have the plate, and that's what the kids learn in school and things like that to help us figure out how much of each of the food groups we're supposed to eat. So there's fruits, vegetables, grains, protein, and dairy. So it's interesting, they don't say meat section, it's like protein. So you can, if you don't eat meat, there's other options for you too. So you could have like peanut butter, nuts, beans, lentils, eggs, you know, all those different things. So it's kind of putting it like that. And same with the dairy section, you know, it could be a dairy alternative also. So we have options here. So the overview of the plate then would be a just down home message. If you guys get nothing else out of this presentation, just one thing I would love for you to remember is to try to look at your plate tonight and see how close you are to getting it half fruits and vegetables, because that's what you want. If you look at that plate right there, you know, it's filled with half fruits and vegetables. And it's because those foods have a lot of vitamins. You know, there are colors. They have tons of antioxidants and things that help fight disease and things like that. So each of the groups have their role, but those are the ones like that have those special lots of vitamins, minerals, and just bright colors that'll help fight off disease. So some people are like, why do I even eat them? You know, like some guy was saying, you know, iceberg lettuce is just nothing. And so, you know, they do have, you know, might have really low calories, which can be good because they can balance out what's on the rest of your plate, but they have a lot of vitamins and things like that. An iceberg doesn't have a ton, but it does have a couple. So you're good to go if you choose some sort of vegetables or fruits over there. And then 1/4 of it would be the grains. So those are considered anything starchy. So that's like your bread, your pasta, your rice, but also things like corn. You know, if you think about it, corn is a grain, right? It grows in the field. So that could go in the grain section. And then for protein, that would be things like the lean proteins, when we'll talk about that, but just fish, chicken, eggs, tofu, things like that. And then dairy, trying to have a little bit of that throughout your day. And you don't have to have all these at one meal. You can have, you know, a snack where, say, I don't really have any milk with my meal, but maybe I have a yogurt for a snack. So it's just the goal is to kind of get you thinking about it, that it should be on your plate somewhere during the day. And we're looking at over the course of the day, over the course of the week, over the course of the month. So it's not like one specific meal, but just kind of like your overall eating. Are you getting these things? But I would love for you to look at your meal tonight and just see how close you are to that half fruits and vegetables, because that's where you want to get. So what to choose more? So it's always fun to talk about these things. So these are foods we get to eat more of, you guys. So load up right now on vegetables, whole fruits, lean proteins, and whole grains. And sometimes people ask, you know, like, I'm really hungry, like a lot. And they're like, what can I eat? And so I would say just go unlimited fruits and vegetables. And they're just so good for you. And they have a lot of fiber if you get the whole versions. And that can help you feel full. And it's hard to, you never go to the doctor and they're like, you have a lot of excess weight. I'm guessing you're eating a lot of vegetables. Those aren't the things that cause us to gain weight. So when you get hungry or you're just still hungry and you're like, I probably, shouldn't have another piece of that chicken, maybe try some vegetables to help you get satisfied. So the recommendation on the vegetables. So these are our different categories of vegetables. So we have like the dark green, the orange and the red, the legumes, starchy vegetables, and other vegetables. So it's like, why do you guys think we need different colors, right? Can anybody write it in the chat box? Why do you think they divide them by the colors sometimes? Does anyone know? Yes, you guys, different vitamins. So each of the different colors, they do something different for you. So that's why it's good to eat the rainbow, right? And so just like trying to think about it, things like, the dark green ones, they're really good for like your mind, preventing disease. We know that they can offer for obesity, help with that, heart disease, things like that. And then like the orange ones, those would be great ones, like, our carrots and our sweet potatoes and mangoes and papaya and pumpkin. Those are all really good for your skin and eyes. You guys remember learning about carrots are good for your eyes? So it's the whole entire orange food group that does those same things. It's like that pigment that gives them that color enables us to kind of group them together. And the berry ones, so those are like the purple and the blue, things like that. We know those are good for the heart, like the red, purple, blue. They have anthocyanins, and those are good for the heart and also the brain, looking like memory. So it's really cool. Legumes, then, they're anything that's in a pod, right? So if you look at a bean or something like that, or lentil, or if you think of like a soybean or a navy bean, all those things come in a pod, and those are considered legumes. And they're actually vegetables and proteins and carbohydrates, but they're the only one that can do that. So it's the only one in 3 food groups. And then we have starchy vegetables, and those are like the corn, the potatoes, things like that. And then the other vegetables, so those are ones that might not fit in the ones above, those like eggplant and things like that. So each of those are very important, but I underlined the first 2 because we know, just looking at what everybody's eating in America, they did charts and things like that. And so they charted out where people were based on where we're supposed to be. And we were way off on the dark green vegetables and orange and red ones. We're pretty much falling short right now of all of them. So you guys could definitely go at this slide, you know, eat more of any of them. But just like the ones that we were, that had the biggest gap were the dark green and then the orange and the red. So if you guys can think about those foods and see how you can add them in your meals, if you are like an all-star right now eating tons of vegetables, try to remember to focus on those colored ones. They're really good for us. We know that, and we're not getting enough. Okay, that's a lot about that. But just recommendation on fruits then. So I would say the best of the best for this group would be to choose the whole fruit. So that is just really important. And juice, you know, it can help us meet our vitamin needs, but what do you guys have? What does the whole fruit have that the juice doesn't? You guys put that in the chat box. You guys are really good.
Fiber.
Yes, fiber. You guys are good. So just doing those things, you know, the fiber helps you feel full. And, you know, if you're diabetic too, a lot of the times, you know, different fruits will affect people differently. And, you know, you have to remember they are carbohydrates. But things with the fiber will help slow down your blood sugar from being absorbed. So like eating the apple with the peel, things like that, that will help decrease the absorption of the sugar. So like even eating a banana when it's greener, it's not as sweet, and that would also, you know, it has less sugar. And so these are just different things to be thinking about. But I think, you know, the overall message is really just try to have the whole fruit when you can. Okay, so versus having the juice. And then, you know, sometimes people, you know, say they're expensive, which sometimes they seem like they really are. But the thing to remember is if you can buy in season, that'll save you a lot of money. So really trying to do that can be good. Not only do they taste the best, they're the cheapest, but they have the most nutrients too. A strawberry, when it's not in season, doesn't have as many nutrients as the ones that are coming right from the field, you know? So another option is the frozen, right? With vegetables too, just they harvest them right away at the peak of the freshness and they run them to the freezer. Basically, it's not like they're sitting around and then we're like, oh, we should freeze those and sell those. It's they go straight from the farm to the freezer for us to buy. And so sometimes they're actually have more nutrients than the fresh ones that have been sitting out there forever. And canned, if you can get it without that salt or the syrup, they can be great options too. Sometimes canned fruits don't have as many don't have as much fiber. Like peaches, they peel them. So just, I guess, you know, when you can get the whole of those, that would be great. And then try to think about it. You know, every time that you are thinking, I'm really craving something sweet, you know, you turn to your husband and you're like, well, we need something. Just try to think of a fruit can be your answer. And so sometimes people like to flavor their yogurt. Maybe they'd add sugar, or maybe you would put some sugar in some waffles or something like that. See if you might be able to do it with a fruit instead. So maybe using bananas instead of sugar in your waffles, or trying to have like stirring in fresh fruit in your yogurt, things like that. those things can really help you because it'll give you the fiber, help you feel full, give you extra nutrients, where we know, unfortunately, sugar doesn't have anything. So that would be just one we can try to choose less. So recommendation, so with the protein then, the ones that we found to be the best for us are the lean ones. And so these would be like things like beans. So beans, like those lentils, chickpeas, so we're talking navy beans, black-eyed peas, black beans, garbanzo beans, did I say kidney beans? And then lentils and split peas and things like that. Those have, you know, they're pretty much have virtually no fat, whereas meat usually has some. They have no cholesterol, and they have a lot of vitamins, minerals, and fiber. So they do have carbohydrates, so meat doesn't have any of that. And so it's just a little bit different when you use them, especially if you're diabetic. You have to just remember that they have carbohydrates, but they can be great in place of meats. And they've been found to actually benefit people who have diabetes, so don't be scared of them if you do have diabetes. And then eating fish, especially the fatty fish for the brain. The other fish, it's very lean and has lots of vitamins and minerals too, so you're not wasting your time having one that's not fatty. But if you do get the fatty one, it has omega-3s. That's the type of fat it has, whereas meats don't have that like that. So eating fish like salmon, tuna, mackerel, sardines, anchovies, those things, and then just doing that instead of meat more often. So like for tonight, if you and your husband, you were gonna go out and get a steak, maybe you could switch to a piece of salmon instead. And that would be one change that would be really good for your heart. Your body would just love that. So just trying to choose those things. And then having nuts, you know, like in snacks and stuff like that, and main dishes, they give you protein. There's actually kind of like a protein that they put on the market now. Is for, you know, people who don't want to use meat, and it's actually ground up pecans, and you know, you can use it and cook it like ground beef. And so just trying to think of different ways, you know, where you could maybe substitute some nuts. And then one way somebody told me when I was first becoming a dietitian, she said, Andrea, it's more feet, more fat. And so I think about that a lot, but it's kind of catchy and it generally works. So you guys, like, what has 4 feet? Right, the cow and the pig usually, and then people are like the horse, the goat, the dog. But then what has 2 feet, right? So it's like the turkey and the chicken, things like that. And then what has no feet? And so that would be the fish and things like that. Or what is not even an animal at all, and that would be the beans. You know, that's our protein from the ground. And so just trying to think of, you know, more feet, more fat, just in general, can be good. You can find lean cuts of these other things, like lean cuts of beef. Just look for top or loin in the name. You know, like a pork loin chop would be better for you than a pork chop. And looking for round. So those are key words that can help you in the store. But if it has a lot of marbling, and that's those white streaks running through, that would be one to just try to do a little bit less of. All right, so recommendations on the whole grains then. So that's that grain section of our group, or of our plate. And so what I would love for you to get here, the best of the best, is to try to get a whole grain when you can. And so there's a lot of different types of whole grains, but if you see that picture there, that is a picture of a whole piece of grain. So the bran and then the germ, when you have white bread, the bran and the germ are taken out. So that's why it's white. You guys see that? You know, because it's just the endosperm that's left. And that part gives us energy. So, you know, white bread would give you energy, but the bran, that's that stuff that helps, like, you know, flush out the bad stuff. You know, people have bran when they, you know, you don't want to get constipated, and that's what it's there for. So I used to work with kids, and, you know, they would eat a lot of, you know, sometimes white bread, we have Pop-Tarts, you know, like just weren't getting any fiber, just none of the whole grains. So really having that can help you guys like get the bad stuff out of you. And then germ, it's really good for your brain and your mind. And it has vitamin E, so it's good for your skin too, ladies and men. Just really trying to have the whole thing gives you so much more. So that's why we want to look for the word whole. in the ingredient list, okay? So you want to choose whole grain breads when you can and aim for at least half. They found that even if you can substitute half of your grains, you know, sometimes some people are like, I'm not switching my bread. I love white bread. I just can't do it. I'm sorry. And so that's fine. You know, keep your white bread. Maybe you could try having brown rice or things like that. And it's a common misperception, I think, that, you know, whole grains, they're not like dry or gritty. They're more of like kind of a nutty flavor. So if you can think of it like that, you know, switching from white rice, it's definitely not the same as brown rice. You know that if you eat both, but it does have a nuttier flavor and it's usually more satisfying. Like the breads that are whole grain, they're denser and they're just like, you know, you have a piece of it and you're like, yeah. Whereas sometimes, for me anyway, I feel like I could eat the entire loaf of that white bread. You just smash it up into like a little cube. But it just doesn't have that density or that satisfaction. So trying different things like tortillas, you know, maybe you can't switch anything else, but you're fine with whole wheat tortillas. Or having the pasta. My sister was saying that, you know, her fiance will not eat whole grains. And so we were trying to brainstorm ideas, but even substituting half and half can really, you know, help you get up that way, you know, or just start with a few, throwing a few noodles in there. And it really, you know, it does taste a little bit different, but you find that after a while, you really start to appreciate it a lot. So, and maybe right away, so that'll be good. But there's other ones too, like quinoa and bulgur and kasha and millet and other grains that you can try. And those are all whole grains. So popcorn is too. If you guys think of it, it's, remember how corn is a grain? So, you know, when you pop it, it's that whole kernel. So that's a whole grain. And so that one also would have that fiber and the things that are good for us. But just fun fact. So with kids, and I think it would probably be similar to adults too, you know, so we can use this. But they did testing and they found that the two that were easiest for the kids to switch to would be the tortillas. You know, like when the mom switched like the white tortillas for the whole wheat, the kids were fine. And then things like the other one was in there like waffles or pancakes. You know, they didn't notice switching to whole wheat flour didn't make that much of a difference to them. So those could be options for you guys if you're, you know, have a spouse or yourself just not so much about that. And I did want to point this out just of interest. I went into the store and you know how, I don't know, as a dietitian, you know, it gets us, right? When they say like wheat rolls. And so I was looked at them because I wanted to find the whole wheat rolls. And so I looked at them and I know it's hard to see, but you want the first ingredient to have the word whole. So on the left is a picture of the rolls and they look pretty dark to me. You know, like if I were picking them up at the store, I'd be like, yes, I got whole wheat rolls. But then you look at the ingredients and it says rolls and it's the first ingredient's water, that it's enriched unbleached flour, wheat flour. So you just got to remember wheat flour, it's, you know, they're all whole, they're all wheat. It's just that you want the whole piece of the wheat. Okay, so some people are saying, you know, I switched to wheat bread, but did you switch to whole wheat bread? You know, maybe just make sure to kind of look at that, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So the ingredients on the bottom, you know how you can see the word whole right away there? So you just want to look for it in the first ingredient on there. And because, do you guys remember why are they in that order on the ingredient list?
It's the main ingredient.
Yes. So it starts out with the most in the beginning and then it decreases as it goes down. So sometimes like I was looking, I don't want to call them out necessarily, but it's different, you know, with Ritz crackers, they have a made with whole wheat version. And so I picked them up and I was like excited, you know, a lot of people like Ritz crackers and it wasn't the first ingredient, you know, maybe you'll go to the store and you can double check me on that and maybe it's changed, but just you want to try to get the first ingredient so that you know at least most of it is whole wheat, whole grain. You know, it doesn't have to be whole wheat, it could be whole oats, whole rye, things like that. All right, moving on. So just calcium foods, those are important, right? And this group, sometimes there's a couple people who think, we don't really need the dairy group, and you can get your nutrients in other foods too. It's just that the nutrients are easiest to get in the dairy group, and we know that this group is the one that gives us a whole bunch of calcium, vitamin D, and some other things that we don't get. It has a lot of protein also. So it's kind of hard, you have to eat a lot of cups of collard greens or things like that to equal a glass of milk. So you can have it without dairy, but just it's important to try to get some. And sometimes people feel like, even me, until I was researching this presentation, it's really just important when you're a kid to get milk. And after that, we don't need dairy that much anymore. But it is the most, it's the primary mineral in our body, right? And so most of it's located in the bone. And although, it's very important, like when you're going up to 30, when you're making those bones, but adequate calcium is also needed for periods of more rapid bone remodeling after you go through menopause. So like older people too. And so it's just like you need that still. And, we only have like this little reserve. So trying to keep us, like getting some of these foods can be good. So sometimes people, they don't do so well with dairy foods, can't digest it, but there's lactose-free products if that's the problem, because that has an enzyme that will help you absorb it. So sometimes people don't have that lactose enzyme, and that's a lot of people from like South Asia and Africa. They tend to be lactose intolerant more often than people, Caucasians, I guess I would say. And so just really trying to recognize that if you're one of those, there's lactose-free milk. And then we can always choose soy milk or almond milk. Just make sure that it has calcium added. And that's the same with like the yogurt. You don't have to drink milk either, but just trying to have it in other ways, that maybe some yogurt or some cheese or things like that, or getting non-dairy sources. You could get things that are fortified with calcium. So there's other options too. But if you don't like any of these dairy foods and you don't want to start, then I would say spinach, turnip greens, broccoli, canned salmon with the bones. The bones have a lot of calcium, right? That's where the calcium is. It's in our bones. Same with salmon. And so almonds also have some. So if you find that you don't eat a lot of calcium, then maybe having some almonds as a snack could be good. Who eats the bones? Well, you can eat the bones in the canned salmon, so that's an option. What about nut milk? Yeah, so just make sure, the thing about those alternative milks, so that would be like cashew milk, almond milk, what is it? There's like hemp milk now, things like that. Sometimes they have the nutrients added in there, but they don't necessarily usually have the protein. So soy milk does have the protein. That's why people say, if you want to switch 1 for 1, soy milk is the closest one to dairy milk. So dairy milk has like protein, and then it has the vitamins like calcium and vitamin D and things like that. But just the other milks, they sometimes are missing, like almond milk doesn't have, I think it has 1 gram of protein, where dairy has about 8. So it's just something, but it has less calories. Things like that. So there's lots of things to weigh, and also if you're diabetic, almond milk doesn't have carbohydrates, whereas regular milk does, because it has a milk sugar. So we're getting really into this now, but so that's an option. And soy, they've actually found to be safe and can be really helpful for our heart. So there's a lot of misconceptions about soy too. It gets a tough rap. But they've done a lot of research on that one, just because there's a lot of tough rap. And so let's see here. I see you guys' questions. I'll try to make sure to get to them at the end. But just, I think what I'm trying to say with dairy is just try to get something, either just make sure you get your calcium, however you get it. I just want you guys to not end up in the hospital with broken bones, okay? Because it can help prevent that osteoporosis. So recommendations for fats then would be to try to choose vegetable oils, so fats that are liquid at room temperature rather than solid fats. So you can look at the nutrition facts also to try to find things low in that saturated fat, because we don't want that. And then trying avocados instead of mayonnaise, or substituting nuts for meat and cheese as a snack or a meal. Those things would just give you more of that healthy fats. So trying to think about fats that are liquid at room temperature. So, you know, when you're cooking an egg, if you have a bunch of fats out that you're trying to figure out what you're going to cook your egg in, like Pam, that would be a great option. But if you're using like olive oil, canola oil, butter, lard, bacon grease, like any of these things, like, and you have them all on your counter, the ones that are liquid at room temperature are the ones that you want to choose more often, okay? Because those are the ones that have less saturated fat. Just remember, saturated kind of makes it solid. So that's the fat that we don't want as much. It's kind of hard, I realize, that avocados don't have that saturated fat, but they are solid. So once you get to foods, it gets a little trickier. Olives are also very good for you. You know, the olive oil comes from them. But just when you're choosing solid fats, it would be better to choose the liquid ones. Okay, and then what to choose less. So you guys got this, because it is just the exact opposite of what we just talked about. So it's just limiting foods high in sodium, saturated fats, added sugars, and refined grains. So it's basically just, if we can just eat more of the foods that we just talked about, then you're going to be fine. You know, you don't even have to worry about this, because it will naturally go down. And so decreasing saturated fats. So these are our saturated fats. Do you see how they're kind of solid at room temperature? Those are ones, they can be hard on the heart, and they actually are what cause our cholesterol to go up. So, you know, people used to think it was the cholesterol in food that causes our cholesterol to go up, which you would think, but it's actually the saturated fat. So what you can do then is you can take the skin off the chicken, because that's where, you know, a lot of the fat in the chicken is, or use lower fat dairy, because it would have less of that saturated fat. And then bake and grill and broil instead of frying. And then just, you know, we have strong evidence that shows that if you can replace those saturated fats with other kinds of them, it's really good for your heart. And that's our number one reason for death. So if we can do that, that would be awesome. So it's like, if you can, you know, maybe choose walnuts instead of cookies for a snack. You know, that would be one where cookies would have more of the saturated fat and walnuts wouldn't. So that would be a great swap. You know, you're like, those are not the same, Andrea. So at least, you know, like just trying to think of with your snacks, I guess, things like that, just trying to swap these things out, or, you know, replacing some of your meats, you know, that might be fattier with something like fish. And that would help you decrease that fat, or just start cooking with oil instead of butter. That would be one great change you could make today. Or just like we had on that other slide, that was a long time ago, I won't go to it, but you know, that picture of the olive oil, you know, in Greece and in Italy, they give you olive oil with your meal, and you can dip your bread in it. So, you know, there's no reason we couldn't do that here, you know, instead of butter. So just take some, you know, it's different, but it's really tasty too. So decreasing saturated fat, these are just some other places you can find it. And they did a lot of research and found that in America, so us, the number one places we get it are burgers and sandwiches. That's where we get most of our saturated fat. And then second category was desserts and sweet snacks. So if you guys can decrease like some of those fattier burgers or sandwiches, maybe like the meatball parmesan or the McRib, something, those just would help you a lot get a little bit less saturated fat. So another thing that we just need to look at would be sodium. And so 75% comes from processed foods. So even if you said you took it off the table, the most of what we get is from things that are either in that box, or that, you know, maybe that TV dinner, just anything that has gone through a lot of processing. So if you eat fruits and vegetables, and, you know, you're eating them frozen without extra sauces, or you get canned with no sodium, these have no, you know, no salt. So just trying to eat more fresh foods, or just a plain grain like plain oatmeal, doesn't have sodium. So it's just when we start mixing things together and putting it usually in a box or in a can, then we just better double check. Or the condiments can have a lot too, and things like, yeah, even bread, some cereals have high amounts. So just trying to check what you have. And then 1 teaspoon is all that we recommended or less per day. A lot of people, it's recommended 1,500 milligrams per day or less. So just think about 1 teaspoon, that's like your thumb tip. So that's about how much you get throughout your whole day. So you got to budget that. So these are our salty six. In America, this is where we get most of our salt. It's from breads, surprisingly, but also the cold cuts. And then cheeses have a lot. So think about like meats, right? Like those cured meats and things like that, they would have a lot. So then pizza has cheese, which has some salt. And then we have the crust, right, from the bread, and then the meat. That's why it causes so much salt in things like pizza or sandwiches. So you have to look next time you go to the store and look at a frozen pizza and just kind of see some of the sodium on the different things. But if you can make the things yourself, then you're way better off. So just trying, I guess, just to be aware of it. And then if you make half your plate fruits and vegetables, you won't have to worry. So you'll be okay. So here's just, a couple easy ways to reduce your sodium. Just eating those fresh fruits, frozen vegetables without sauces, checking the labels then, and then requesting that the salt be left out of your meal. Like sometimes like at the end, if you go out to eat, they'll just add a bunch or, to top it. And so just trying to just say, skip that. And then try using different, herbs and spices. Other than salt, they're all really good for you. Don't look for ones that are, blends. If you get blends, some of them have salt. So just make sure that they don't, look at the ingredients on the little shaker. And if it's just one thing like cinnamon or oregano or parsley, these are things that have benefits in themselves. Even black pepper, they've found that it can help increase absorption of nutrients. So it's like sometimes black pepper, it kind of gets associated with salt and you're like, I'm not going to have either one, but black pepper isn't bad. So it's just our salt that we kind of have to watch. All right. And I don't know if you guys love Mrs. Dash, but there's a lot of different, lots of different fun flavors. So you can go at those and see what you like. And so sources of added sugars, I just wanted to say too, they're about to put out a new dietary guidelines, which in my world is a really big thing. It's like telling, what is the best of the best with the research right now. And so I read the preliminary report, and before they were recommending, like if you can at least get, X amount of your calories or less from added sugars, that would be great. And they cut that virtually in half for these new dietary guidelines. They're like, it does nothing good for you. And we know that it is causing a lot of harm. So it just, with the added sugars, I'm not worried about like actual fruit sugar or the sugars that's naturally in milk. I'm worried more about the ones that they add into foods. And in America, for us, this is where we get most of them. So it's in the sugary drinks. And so if I could do one thing for you just to help you, just if today you stop drinking so much sugary drinks, that would be great. They just don't have any benefits, and they can add a lot of calories, which can cause extra weight. So even if you guys can switch to like mixing it half and half or just having a little bit less, that'll be good. And just trying to think, then trying to think about where you could use fruit instead of sugar to help you get that. But the top sources are those beverages usually for us. And it's hard, with the added sugars, but it's nice because they put it on the label now. And so now we can try to find what we need for the added sugars. So we can tell the difference between the ones that are added and the ones that aren't. So that's a lot about that. I could go on for a whole presentation on added sugar and how many teaspoons to get, but we won't talk about that now. So I'll look at the label really quick. So just if you're looking at a label, some things to look for would be to try to limit those things that are in the yellow, right? But the first thing you should always look at is the serving size up there in the top, because that's what the label is based on. So if you're eating twice what the label is, then you have to double everything on the label. So sometimes it's like Chips Ahoy, and then it's like a serving is 1 cookie, and you look at it and it's only like 20 calories in a cookie. and you say, that's not so bad. And so, but if you just look at that and you don't realize that it's just one cookie and you eat 17 cookies and you have to multiply it, you guys get it? So just basically look at the serving size first so you know if you should decrease it, because maybe you don't even need a cup of that. Or not. And then you can use the percentages on the side to kind of cheat. And so it's really nice because if you look at those percentages, 20% or more is considered high, whereas 5% or less is considered low. So you can kind of look at the label and you know that if sodium says 20% by it, you could say that that is high in sodium. And that's actually, you know how sometimes you'll go to the supermarket and it will say low in, maybe it'll say low in saturated fat. So it has to be 5% or less by law. So it's kind of cool because the 5 and the 20, they call it the 5-20 rule. So it can help you. Just 5% is considered low and 20 or more is high. So this right here, I think it says mac and cheese is what it is. I don't know if you can see it, you guys, but its calcium is 20%. So this is actually high in calcium. So that's great because we want, you know, we just talked all about calcium, right? And so here's the new label then. So that was the old one, but they still have the percentages there. But you'll have to look in the store now. Do you see how they made something different? They made the calories bigger. They made that serving size bigger just for us so we could see it better. They found that people weren't looking at it. So that's why they did that. But they also included added sugars where that wasn't in the old label. So now we can just look and see how much they actually add versus how much is in there already. I like this one as just in my job because Raisin Bran, like, you know, that's hard to tell. Raisins have sugar. So we know that Raisin Bran is going to have sugar, but I just want to know how much extra they're adding. You know, maybe I'm better off just buying bran flakes and throwing in my own raisins. Yeah, so these are a lot of things, you guys, but just trying to, I guess, help with that. So the healthier challenge would be just to try, what I would like you guys to do is to choose, instead of like the pill form of it, to try to actually eat your vitamins and minerals. Because we're learning more and more that just the whole food has something that, you know, they work together differently sometimes than when you actually just extract the vitamin. And so it's like we're still understanding it all, but if you can get it from the whole foods instead of taking the pills, that would be great and probably help you feel more satisfied and save you some money too. So try to get your nutrients from the food. And just a couple of helpful things using, you know, when you're looking for nutrition information, try to type in, when you type in your question, put .gov or .edu or .org, because those will pull up reputable sites, whereas sometimes you don't want something that's selling you something all the time, but just trying to look for something, you know, backed by the science then and by what we know. Okay, so then just in summary then, healthy eating patterns would be higher in those plant-based foods, just because we know that a high intake of plant-based foods like fruits, vegetables, legumes, remember those are the beans and the peas and the nuts and the lentils, those and whole grains, they're linked to less heart disease, high blood pressure, lower blood pressure if you eat more of those things, lower stroke, and less risk of type 2 diabetes. So they're all good if we can have more of those. And so like the Mediterranean diet you might have heard about, that one fits all those things. You know, Mediterranean diet is high in those fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains. And then there's also a vegetarian diet they recommend that can be high in those. And then there's a healthy US diet plan that they recommend. So if you can choose any of those, are all great options. Yeah, just trying to have those things more. So the review then would just be to try to fill half your plate with those fruits and vegetables, and then a fourth of it with starchy stuff, fourth of it with lean protein. So this is like if you're having your ideal best plate, right? Trying to do those things more often. So I have a couple pictures because sometimes they just help, I don't know, they help me kind of see when I'm trying to learn something, and I'm hoping they might help you. So like if you look at the picture on the left, right, it's calling out the second thing there, like saturated fat, it says 8 grams, but if you swap the other thing, you decrease it to 3 grams of saturated fat and you have almost half the calories. So just trying to swap things like that. Or here's another one. Just it would add in your nutrients, right? And it can help you still feel satisfied because of the fiber in those in the lettuce salad. And then here's an option too, right? And it's like, it kind of looks like, to me anyway, the one on the right, it looks like you kind of get more, but it's way less calories and lower in a lot of the things that we don't want as much of. So just trying to swap some things, you know, how they did it with the banana and the peanut butter instead of, so I've actually, somebody told me once they mash up strawberries and just put them on their sandwich instead of jam. It's kind of a fun idea. I guess it depends on if you want how wet your bread, right? But just things like, you know, swapping this, say you go to a drive-through Taco Bell, just trying to choose the fresco option or the fresh option can be really good. Look at that sodium decrease, helps a little bit there. And then something like this too, trying to choose the red sauce when you can save you a lot. And I gotta say too, you know, maybe you love the one on the left. I talk about that all the time, but just really, you know, just trying to not have it very often then, you know, make your usual one the red sauce, and then the every once in a while one would be the one on the left, you know, because life is short and I want you to enjoy your foods. I just want you to be healthy also, or feel good, you know, so just eating better can make you feel good, which is why I started doing what I'm doing. I figured it out and then I was like, that's really cool. And so this is a picture a participant sent me. Somebody in one of my classes, she went home and did that. So she was like, you know, made it half of her plate, the vegetables. And then this is somebody too, a good friend, did the same thing. And that's actually mashed pumpkin. So there's lots of fun options you can do. So then the idea would be to think about then what you're having tonight for dinner and maybe how you could make it, you know, the half fruits and vegetables and things like that. Ricky's like, I'm so hungry right now. Yeah. And then just the 1/4 of the grains and the 1/4 of the protein, things like that, but trying to make it the leaner options when you can. Just trying to choose these things, or just making one of these changes, or switching that drink like I was preaching about there, but just if you can do any of these things, it can really help you. So I have a short evaluation. I'll try to send that maybe even tonight here. I know you're excited, but I would love your feedback on that stuff. So thank you. And then I do have some classes coming up. I try to update them on Eventbrite just so at least one spot, everything's, you know, up to date. Because sometimes, you know, I'll make a flyer and send it out, but then we add classes or things like that. So if you have a chance to check Eventbrite, you can register for any of the upcoming classes. If you're up for listening to a little bit more of me, and I will take your feedback. So that's good. Questions now. I know there were some, but I just wanted to, in case you would like to get off, I want to tell everybody thank you for coming. I know it's late in your day and it's kind of around supper time, so it would be kind of hard to talk about food the whole time. So thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it. So let me just see if there are any questions. So somebody asked about diabetics and fruit in relation to sugar. Yeah, and then talking to your doctor or your dietitian can help you make, you know how we were talking about that individualized plan for you? It's like, we know with diabetes, you need so many carbohydrates per meal. You know, some people do okay with more and some people need less. So just remembering fruits have natural sugars, so they do have carbohydrates then. I would, say just dietitian can help you make that personalized eating plan, or sometimes the doctor knows about what you need or could refer you to a dietitian. But usually I say, you know, in general, they found that even with diabetics, you know, fruit is really good for you, especially the ones with the fiber, and the berries tend to be lower in sugar. But, you know, not everybody reacts the same to different foods. Some people, watermelon goes great. But other people, you know, even though it has a lot of water, just blood sugar goes up, you know, so I guess talking to your doctor, getting personalized plan. We're all a little bit different. So let me see here what you said about other things. You guys were awesome with knowing the answers. Yeah, soup can have a lot of salt. You can make that one yourself. That would be awesome. Some of them they've gotten a little bit better though. They finding, I talk to like people at Campbell's, and things like that, just at my different conferences. And they just find that consumers were used to so much salt that when they adjust it, people are like, this does not taste right. And so sometimes they're even reducing it stealthily and not proclaiming that they're reducing it. So it's like over time, they've actually taken a lot of it out of the food supply, but they don't tell people because they find that when they say low in salt, people think it tastes bad. So just, it's kind of nice they're doing it behind the scenes, but they're working for us then. Tea, yeah. Charlene was saying for the sweet drinks, the tea. Yes, the southern kind, the one with the sugar. So if you don't add any sugar, tea is excellent for you. Same with coffee. So it's just that what we add to these things sometimes. Everything in moderation. Yes, right. Or sometimes people say that 80-20 rule, right? If you can eat 80% of the time, the best of the best, and then 20% of the time you're going for the fried chicken, you might be okay. Just just trying to choose the other ones the best. Somebody ate fish before class. That's awesome. Let's see if there's
Fish
anything.
is my favorite protein.
That's good. May I ask which one you like?
I happen to have flounder today, but I'll eat salmon. In fact, I make salmon with ginger.
So I gotta ask you, can I ask how you prepared it?
The salmon, when I make it, I usually bake it.
Okay.
I put olive oil or canola oil in the dish, that the pan I'm putting the fish in, because so it's doesn't stick.
Yeah.
But I put onions and garlic on it. I put ginger, lots of seasonings. I rarely cook with salt because food has so much salt already in it.
All the
So,
processed ones.
and the
Sure.
seasoning, all the seasonings I put on basically eliminate the need for salt. And I love red pepper flakes.
Me
I like
too. You found
spicy.
the fan.
So I'll put some red pepper flakes. I try, if I'm cooking for someone else, obviously I limit the pepper. But because I eat pepper like a Jamaican. Most people don't. My father doesn't, but I learned to eat pepper
Good.
from West Indian people, so I can eat spicy food. But I like curries and cumin and turmeric. So I've been using that a lot lately, and I'm getting feedback like, wow, this is like Caribbean, but it's spicy.
Yeah. So the idea is just when you do cook your fish, you guys, like some people are, they're all about having fish, but just they've done studies and the omega-3s go way down when you fry it. It's almost negligible. I can't say that
Yeah.
word tonight, but just it's really small then, or if anything left once you fry it. And so it kind of changes that. So if you can bake it, steam it, those shrimp, grill the shrimp, you know, just what she
Okay.
said with baking it, if you can. And then Tom, he had a question on the dietary guidelines coming out. So they're in the comment period right now. So they should be coming out soon because they're for 2020 to 2025. So the new ones, like they're done this year, um, but it'll be, yeah, you'll hear all about them for sure. So
If
um,
I'm doing a fillet of flounder, fillet of tilapia fillet, then I put it in the pan with the seasonings and some olive oil, canola oil. I don't fry it, I more saute it, because when you start adding all of those seasonings like the curry and the turmeric and so forth, it blends in and it creates its own little sauce, so to speak,
yeah,
from the
yeah.
moisture from the fish and the oil and that. So it, and the onions, has liquid in it.
So just a couple other people had just somebody asked about um, eczema, right? and just are there any foods that prevent or aggravate that? That's not something I know without just off the top of my head. I know research is changing on that a lot. They're trying to figure things like that out. But if you want to email me, I would try to find anything, but I don't know of anything off the top of my head for sure. And then just somebody else asked, yeah, what I'm going to do then is hopefully I recorded this and I'll post it on YouTube and send out the link to everybody who registered so you
Yeah, you
guys can
recorded
find
it.
it. So,
You did record it
um,
because I can see the recording button.
okay, we're good to go.
But for eczema and
Okay.
psoriasis,
Um,
vitamin D and sunshine. My dermatologist used ultraviolet radiation to treat mine when I was much younger. Sunshine helps that.
Another way to get our vitamin D. All right. Does anybody else have any other questions? I'll let you guys all go and make your plate have vegetables and fruits. Okay. Well, I thank you guys all so much and thanks for being here. It was fun. I can see some of you guys on your pictures and um, yeah, it's nice to know you're there. So thank you. And I really, thank you guys for staying with me. And I hope you guys all have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.